English Daily, the podcast.
Your English journey starts now.
Welcome back to English Daily Podcast. I'm Jack, your host, and I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna, and I'm thrilled to join you for another episode. Jack, I've been looking forward to today's topic for weeks now.
Me too, Anna. You know, today's discussion is something that literally changed my life a few years ago, and I think it can do the same for many of our listeners.
Oh, what are we talking about today, Jack?
Today, we're diving into one of the most high-stakes skills you can master in 2026, how to speak English confidently in job interviews for remote tech roles.
That's such an important topic. With remote work becoming the norm, more and more tech professionals are interviewing for positions where English is the primary language, often from the comfort of their own homes.
Exactly. And here's the thing. We've all heard about the technical skills crisis in tech, but I think there's an equally important issue that doesn't get enough attention: the social skills crisis in professional settings.
You're so right, Jack. It's not just about knowing the right answers anymore. It's about communicating them with confidence, building rapport through a screen, and showing your personality even when you're miles away from your interviewer.
That's exactly what we're going to tackle today. We're going to break down the psychology, the language, and the practical strategies you need to absolutely crush your next remote tech interview.
And we have tons of practical content for you today. Key phrases, real-world scenarios, personal stories, and even reflection questions to help you internalize everything we discuss.
Let's get into it.
So, Jack, before we dive into the actual language and strategies, let's set the stage. What makes remote tech interviews in 2026 different from what they were even a couple of years ago?
Great question, Anna. You know, I remember back in 2020 when remote interviews first became the norm. It was kind of a chaotic adaptation. But now, in 2026, we've really refined the whole process. Companies have gotten extremely sophisticated about evaluating candidates remotely.
What are some of the key differences we should be aware of?
Well, for starters, the asynchronous component has become huge. Many companies now use recorded video responses as a first round, where you answer questions on camera without anyone on the other end. That's a completely different skill than live interviewing.
Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't realize that was becoming so common. How do candidates typically struggle with that format?
The biggest struggle is that you don't have real-time feedback. In a live interview, if you see the interviewer's face going blank, you can adjust. With recorded responses, you need to be incredibly self-aware and deliberate. You need to project energy and engagement without any human interaction to feed off of.
I can imagine that's really challenging. And what about the live interview rounds? Have they changed too?
Absolutely. The live interviews now often involve more collaborative elements. Think virtual whiteboards, shared coding environments, and even group problem-solving sessions with multiple interviewers watching you in real time. It's like being in a fishbowl, but you're the only fish.
That's a great analogy. Okay, so let's talk about the psychological aspect. You mentioned there's a social skills crisis. What exactly do you mean by that?
Here's the uncomfortable truth, Anna. Over the past few years, especially with remote work becoming normalized, many tech professionals have become incredibly technically skilled, but socially awkward in professional settings. They can code circles around everyone else, but when it comes to articulating their thoughts, building rapport, or navigating small talk, they completely fall apart.
That's actually really insightful. I've seen this myself, people who are brilliant in their technical work but freeze up when they have to explain their thought process or talk about themselves.
And that's exactly why we're doing this episode. Technical skills can get you in the door, but communication skills determine whether you get the job. Period.
Absolutely. And for our international listeners who are interviewing in English, there's this whole additional layer of complexity. Not only do you need to communicate professionally, but you need to do it in a language that might not be your native tongue.
And that's what we're here to fix. By the end of this episode, you'll have a toolkit of phrases, strategies, and mindsets that will transform your confidence.
Let's get into the psychological side of things, Jack, because I think a lot of our listeners already know the technical prep, the STAR method, common interview questions, etc. But the confidence piece is where they really struggle.
You're absolutely right, Anna. And honestly, this is where I've seen the biggest transformation in my own interviewing journey. I used to be absolutely terrified of interviews. My palms would sweat, my voice would shake, and I would ramble endlessly trying to fill awkward silences.
Oh no, I can totally relate to that feeling. What changed for you?
It took me a long time to realize that confidence in interviews isn't about being the smartest person in the room, it's about genuine curiosity and a desire to learn. When I shifted my mindset from, I need to prove I'm good enough, to, I'm here to have a conversation and see if this is a good fit, everything changed.
That's such an important reframe. And it makes sense because think about it from the interviewer's perspective. They don't want someone who's trying too hard. They want someone who can be authentic and collaborative.
Exactly. And here's another truth bomb for our listeners. Interviewers actually want you to succeed. They're not sitting there hoping you'll fail. Hiring is expensive and time-consuming, so when they bring you in, they're genuinely hoping you'll be the person they're looking for.
That's such a good point. I think we often forget that. We put so much pressure on ourselves, imagining these adversarial scenarios where the interviewer is trying to catch us out.
And that pressure is exactly what destroys our ability to communicate well. So my first big piece of psychological advice is reframe the interview as a two-way conversation, not an interrogation. You're evaluating them as much as they're evaluating you.
I love that. Now, what about specific techniques? Because mindset alone isn't enough. We need practical tools.
Oh, there are so many great techniques. Let's start with power poses. Research has shown that standing in confident postures before an interview, even for just 2 minutes, can significantly reduce cortisol and increase confidence hormones.
Wait, really? That sounds almost too simple to be true.
I know, it sounds like one of those self-help myths, but the research is actually quite compelling. Even if the physiological effects are modest, the psychological effects are huge. When you physically embody confidence, you feel more confident. It's like fake it till you make it, but backed by science.
I love that. Now, what about specific power poses our listeners can do before their interview?
Stand tall with your hands on your hips like a superhero, or do the victory pose, arms raised in the air like you just won something. Even something as simple as sitting at the edge of your chair with your feet flat on the ground and your hands on the table can make a difference.
I love that. Now, what about during the interview? What do you do when you feel your confidence wavering?
This is where preparation really pays off. You need to have confidence-boosting anchoring techniques ready to go. One of my favorites is the pause and breathe technique. When you feel yourself getting nervous or losing your thought process, simply pause, take a breath, and say something like, "That's a great question. Let me think about that for a moment."
Actually, that advice is gold because often our nervousness manifests as talking too fast or filling silences with ums and uhs. By deliberately pausing, you actually come across as more thoughtful and confident.
Absolutely. And here's another secret. It's completely okay to say, "I don't know," or "I'm not sure, but here's how I would approach that." Interviewers respect honesty far more than trying to bluff your way through something.
That's so important. I think a lot of candidates feel like they need to have the perfect answer to everything. But the reality is they're hiring you for your problem-solving abilities, not for knowing everything off the top of your head.
Exactly. And with that mindset shift, let's move into the actual language you need to master.
Okay, Jack, let's get to the good stuff. What are the key phrases our listeners need to master for their remote tech interviews?
I'm so glad you asked, Anna. I've prepared a comprehensive list of phrases that cover the most common interview scenarios. Let's break them down category by category.
Perfect. Let's start with opening and closing the interview, those crucial first and last impressions.
Great start. For opening an interview, you want to be warm, professional, and show genuine enthusiasm. Here are some key phrases. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you today. I'm really excited to learn more about this role in your team. It's great to connect with you virtually. I've been looking forward to this. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me.
Those are so important. And what about when the interviewer asks you to tell them about yourself?
The classic "tell me about yourself" question. This is often the first substantial question, and it sets the tone for everything else. Here are some powerful ways to answer. I'd be happy to share my background with you. Most recently, I've been working as a role at company where I focused on key responsibility. Let me give you a quick overview of my career journey, and then I'd love to dive deeper into any areas you're interested in. My career has been centered around industry or field, and I'm particularly passionate about specific area.
And what about when you need to describe your experience or accomplishments?
This is where the STAR method comes in: situation, task, action, result. Here are phrases to frame your answers. One project I'm particularly proud of was when I led project at company. The situation was describe, and the task was describe. I decided to action, which resulted in result, with numbers if possible. In that role, I was responsible for responsibility. One challenge we faced was challenge, and my approach was to action, which ultimately led to positive outcome.
Oh, now what about when you need to discuss a failure or weakness? That's always a tricky one.
Oh, this is where many candidates completely crash and burn. The key is to be honest but strategic. Here's how to handle it. One area I've been working on improving is legitimate growth area. Recently, I've been specific actions you're taking to improve. Early in my career, I struggled with specific weakness, but I've developed strategies to address it, such as specific technique. That's a great question. One failure that taught me a lot was situation. What I learned from that experience was lesson, and it's shaped how I approach related area today.
Those are so much better than the typical, "I'm a perfectionist" answer everyone gives.
Right. Those answers are so overused they've become meaningless. The interviewer wants to see genuine self-awareness and a growth mindset.
And what about technical questions? How do you handle those in a remote interview format?
Technical questions in remote interviews can be tricky because you can't use a physical whiteboard. Here are phrases for navigating technical discussions. Could you clarify what you mean by specific term? I want to make sure I understand the problem correctly. Let me walk you through my thought process on this one. I'm going to approach this by breaking it down into steps or components. That's an interesting constraint I hadn't considered. Let me adjust my approach.
And what about when you're stuck or need time to think?
This is crucial. Don't be afraid to ask for time or admit you need to think. That's an interesting problem. Can I take a moment to think through my approach? I'm not immediately certain of the best solution, but here's what I'm considering. Let me think about this more systematically before I give you my answer.
Now, let's talk about questions you should ask the interviewer. That's where many candidates drop the ball.
Oh, this is so important. The questions you ask at the end can literally make or break your candidacy. Here are some powerful questions. What does success look like in this role after 90 days? Can you tell me about the team I'll be working with and how they collaborate? What are the biggest challenges the team is currently facing, and how could someone in this role help address them? How has the team evolved over the past year, and where do you see it heading? What do you enjoy most about working at company?
Those are fantastic questions. They show you're genuinely interested in the role and that you've done your homework.
Exactly. And finally, let's cover closing phrases. Thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed learning more about the role. I'm excited about the possibility of joining your team and contributing to specific goal. Is there any additional information I can provide that would help with your decision?
And there you have it, a comprehensive toolkit of phrases for every stage of the interview. Now let's talk about some of the more nuanced aspects of remote interviewing. You know, Jack, I've been thinking about this. Remote interviews have some unique challenges that in-person interviews don't have. Let's unpack those.
Absolutely, Anna. And this is where a lot of candidates get caught off guard. Let me walk through the major ones.
What's the first challenge?
The first challenge is technical difficulties. Your internet could fail, your audio could cut out, your video could freeze. Here's how to handle it professionally. I'm sorry, I think we have a connection issue. Can you hear me now? It seems like there's an audio problem on my end. Let me try switching to my phone for a moment. I apologize for the technical difficulties. Shall we continue, or would you prefer to reschedule?
Those are great scripts to have ready. What else?
Another huge challenge is reading nonverbal cues through a screen. When you're in person, you can pick up on subtle body language, but on video, it's much harder. Here's how to compensate. I want to make sure I'm being clear. Please feel free to interrupt if you need me to elaborate. I'm getting a sense that observation, but I'd love your thoughts on that. How am I doing on time? I want to make sure I'm covering everything you want to know.
That's really smart. What about maintaining engagement and energy through the screen? That's something I struggle with personally.
Oh, Anna, you're not alone. This is one of the hardest parts of remote interviewing. When you're in a room together, the energy is more natural. On video, you have to be almost exaggerated in your expressiveness. Here's what works. I'm really engaged in this conversation. I want to make sure that comes across on video. Sorry, I'm getting excited about this topic. That point you just made is really interesting. Could you tell me more?
And what about the awkwardness of virtual environments? Sometimes there's just silence, and it feels so uncomfortable.
Oh, the dreaded virtual silence. Here's the thing. In remote interviews, delays can make silences feel even longer than they actually are. Here's how to handle them. I've covered the main points. Would you like me to go deeper on any particular area? I realize I've been talking for a while. Do you have any questions so far? I'm happy to shift gears if there's something specific you'd like to discuss.
And what about the different types of remote interviews? I know some companies do panel interviews, some do back-to-back rounds, some do async video responses.
You're right, there are so many formats. Let's break them down. For panel interviews, multiple interviewers, I want to make sure I'm addressing everyone. Name, I'd love to hear your perspective on topic. That's a great point from both of you. It sounds like you're looking for someone who can balance A and B. For back-to-back rounds, thank you for that round. I'm looking forward to speaking with the next team. Before we wrap, is there anything from the previous rounds you'd like me to clarify or expand on? For asynchronous video responses, I'm going to take a moment to organize my thoughts before I start recording. Let me know if you'd like me to elaborate on any of my responses.
This is such comprehensive advice, Jack. Now let's move on to something I think is really important, dealing with accented English and language barriers. You know, Jack, I want to address something that I know is a huge concern for many of our international listeners, dealing with accents and potentially being misunderstood in English interviews.
This is such an important topic, Anna, and it's one that doesn't get enough attention. Let me start by saying something clearly. Your accent is not a weakness. It's part of your identity and your story.
Absolutely. And in the global tech industry of 2026, diversity of accents is absolutely valued and celebrated.
That said, there are strategies you can use to ensure you're understood clearly. I want to make sure I'm being clear. Please stop me if you need me to repeat anything. I notice my accent might make some words less clear. I'm happy to spell anything out if needed. That's a great question. Let me rephrase that to make sure it comes across clearly.
And what about when you genuinely don't understand something the interviewer says?
This is so important, Anna. Never pretend you understand when you don't. Here's how to handle it gracefully. I'm sorry, could you please repeat that? I want to make sure I understand fully. Could you clarify what you mean by specific word or phrase? I want to make sure I'm answering your actual question. Could you rephrase that?
And what about speed? I imagine speaking too fast is a common issue.
Absolutely. One of the best things you can do is slightly slow down your natural pace. Here are some phrases to help with that. That's an excellent question. Let me take a moment to think through my answer. I want to make sure I explain this clearly, so let me go step by step. This is a complex topic, so let me break it down into parts.
And here's something I really want our listeners to remember. It's completely okay to have an accent. The key is clarity, not perfection. Some of the best engineers and tech leaders I know speak English with accents, and they're incredibly successful because they communicate effectively.
That's so well said, Anna. And here's another truth. Interviewers who judge you negatively based on your accent are not people you want to work for anyway. Companies that value diversity understand that clear communication matters more than accent perfection.
Yes, own your voice. Now, let's move to another critical aspect, following up after the interview. All right, Jack, let's talk about something that a lot of candidates overlook, the follow-up after the interview. This is where you can really set yourself apart.
Oh, this is one of my favorite topics. The follow-up is where magic happens. Most candidates send a generic thank you email and call it a day, but you can do so much more.
What do you recommend?
First, let's cover the basic thank you email. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. I really enjoyed learning more about the role, team, or company. Our conversation reinforced my excitement about the opportunity to specific aspect of the role. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you need any additional information.
And what about going above and beyond that?
This is where you can really shine. If there's something specific you discussed in the interview that you want to expand on, send a follow-up with additional thoughts. Following up on our discussion about topic, I wanted to share some additional resources or ideas. I did some thinking about the challenge you mentioned regarding problem, and I wanted to share a few ideas. I know we touched on topic briefly, and it's been on my mind since our conversation.
That's brilliant. You're basically showing that you're already thinking about the job even after the interview is over.
Exactly. And here's another strategy. If you had any technical challenges during the interview, maybe you couldn't quite solve a coding problem, send along a thoughtful solution afterward. I wanted to follow up on the technical problem we discussed. After our call, I thought of an alternative approach. I've been refining my solution to the problem we worked through together.
That shows initiative and a growth mindset. Now, how long should you wait before following up if you haven't heard back?
Great question. Typically, wait about a week to 10 days after your stated timeline is passed. Here's a polite check-in. I wanted to follow up on the status of my application. I remain very excited about the opportunity to join team. I understand hiring processes take time. I just wanted to check in and see if there are any updates. I'm still very interested in the role and would love to know if there are any next steps.
These are all such practical, actionable strategies. I feel like our listeners now have an incredible toolkit to work with.
We really covered a lot today, Anna, but I think we're just getting started. Why don't we move into our vocabulary breakdown section?
Absolutely. Let's break down some of the key vocabulary and phrases we covered today. I'll read them out, and Jack, you can provide brief explanations.
Perfect. Let's go through these together.
First category, opening and closing. 1. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you today. 2. I'm really excited to learn more about this role and your team. 3. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. 4. I really enjoyed our conversation. 5. I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
These phrases set a positive, professional tone. Notice how they're specific and genuine, not generic.
Next, describing experience. 1. One project I'm particularly proud of was... 2. The situation was, and the task was... 3. I decided to do, which resulted in... 4. In that role, I was responsible for...
These are your STAR method anchors. They help structure your answers in a compelling narrative format.
Handling difficult questions. 1. One area I've been working on improving is... 2. That's a great question. Let me think about that for a moment. 3. I'm not certain, but here's how I would approach that. 4. One failure that taught me a lot was...
These give you time to think and show honesty and vulnerability, which build trust with your interviewer.
Asking great questions. 1. What does success look like in this role after 90 days? 2. Can you tell me about the team I'll be working with? 3. What are the biggest challenges the team is currently facing? 4. What do you enjoy most about working here?
These questions show you've done your research and that you're genuinely evaluating whether this role is right for you.
Technical discussion. 1. Could you clarify what you mean by... 2. Let me walk you through my thought process. 3. I'm going to approach this by breaking it down into... 4. That's an interesting constraint I hadn't considered.
These phrases help you navigate technical discussions with confidence and clarity.
Follow-up. 1. Following up on our discussion about... 2. I wanted to share some additional thoughts. 3. I remain very excited about the opportunity. 4. I just wanted to check in on the status.
These turn you from a passive candidate into an active professional who's genuinely invested in the opportunity.
Wow, that's a comprehensive vocabulary list. I think our listeners should practice these until they become completely natural.
Absolutely. Now let's move into our reflection questions section.
Reflection questions. Now it's time for some reflection. I'm going to ask you some questions, Jack, and you can think through your answers out loud. Our listeners, this is your time to reflect on your own experiences as well.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
First question. Think about your last job interview. Or if you haven't had one recently, imagine an upcoming one. What's the one thing that makes you most nervous about the interview process?
For me, it used to be the "tell me about yourself" question. I never knew how much detail to give or how long it should be. But now I realize it's really just an icebreaker. Give a concise overview of your professional journey and then invite them to ask questions.
Great insight. Second question. What aspect of remote interviewing do you think will be the most challenging for you? The technical difficulties, reading nonverbal cues, maintaining energy, or something else?
I think maintaining energy through the screen is my biggest challenge. I tend to get quieter when I'm focused, but on video, that can come across as disengagement. I've learned to be more expressive than feels natural.
Third question. Do you have any specific phrases or techniques you already use in interviews that work well for you? What are they?
One technique that has been incredibly powerful for me is starting my answers with a brief pause and a deep breath. It sounds simple, but it helps me center myself and speak more slowly and deliberately. Another is explicitly inviting follow-up questions. Does that answer your question, or would you like me to go deeper on any aspect?
Fourth question. How might you reframe interviews from being scary to being collaborative conversations?
This is a mindset shift that took me years to fully embrace. Now, before every interview, I tell myself, I'm here to learn about this company and share my story. We're both trying to figure out if this is a good fit. That removes so much of the pressure.
Fifth question. If you had to describe your greatest professional strength in just 30 seconds, what would you say? Practice saying it out loud right now.
My greatest professional strength is my ability to bridge technical complexity and business impact. In my current role, I've led initiatives that improved system performance by 40% while also reducing costs by $200,000 annually. I believe in making technology accessible and measurable.
That was perfect. Notice how he included specific numbers and showed the impact of his work. Sixth question. What is one specific phrase or technique from today's episode that you plan to use in your next interview?
I'm going to use the "that's a great question" pause technique when I need to think. It's so much better than rushing to fill the silence.
Seventh question. How might you demonstrate genuine curiosity and enthusiasm in a remote interview where the interviewer can't feel your energy in person?
I would be more explicit about it than feels comfortable. Say things like, I'm really excited about this topic, or that's a great point. I've never thought about it that way. You have to verbalize what in-person energy would normally communicate.
Eighth question. If an interviewer asks you about a weakness or failure and you don't have a good answer prepared, what will you do?
First, don't panic. Take that moment to think. If you genuinely don't have a good example ready, it's okay to say something like, that's a great question. Let me think about that. I'd say one area I'm still developing is legitimate growth area, but I'd rather give you a more thoughtful answer after our conversation. Would it be okay if I followed up with you via email on that?
Ninth question. How do you plan to follow up after your next interview? What will you do differently from the typical generic thank you email?
I'm going to send a follow-up that references a specific topic we discussed and adds value, maybe a relevant article or a deeper thought about a technical problem we talked through. That shows I'm genuinely engaged.
Final question. What is one thing about yourself, your background, your accent, your experience, that you might have been worried about in interviews, but now you realize is actually a unique strength?
For me, it's my non-traditional career path. I didn't go to a fancy university, and I took some unusual detours in my career. But now I see that those experiences gave me a unique perspective and adaptability that more traditional candidates might not have. I've learned to frame my unconventional path as a strength.
That's beautiful, Jack. And I hope all of our listeners can find those unique strengths in themselves. These reflection questions are so powerful because they help you internalize everything we've discussed today.
Wow, Jack, this has been such an incredible episode. We've covered so much ground today, from understanding the remote interview in 2026 to the psychology of confidence to essential phrases to navigating unique remote challenges to owning your accent to the art of the follow-up.
We really have, Jack, and I feel like we've given our listeners a comprehensive toolkit that can genuinely transform their interview performance.
And remember, everyone, confidence isn't about being perfect. It's about being prepared, being authentic, and being genuinely curious. The more you can shift your mindset from, I need to prove myself, to, I'm here to have a conversation, the more natural and effective your interviews will become.
Absolutely. And please, please practice these phrases out loud. Read them, record yourself, listen back, and keep refining. Interview skills are like any other skill. They improve with deliberate practice.
And don't forget to check out the show notes for this episode. We'll have a complete transcript,
all the phrases we covered today and some additional resources to help you prepare. That's right. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with a friend who might benefit from it, and leave us a review. It helps us reach more listeners who need this kind of support.
And if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please reach out. We love hearing from our community.
That's all for today, everyone. I'm Jack,
And I'm Anna.
and we'll see you next time on English Daily Podcast.
Thanks for listening and keep practicing. You've got this. Your learning journey doesn't stop here. Keep improving your English. Click the next video or explore more episodes we've picked just for you. See you in the next lesson.